The President of the United States is arguably the most important position in the world. As the leader of the free world, the safety of the President is an important job for the dedicated servicemen and women willing to take a bullet for POTUS and to keep them and their families safe for life. But not every day is dodging bullets from Jodie Foster fanboys. It's a little more pedestrian than that. Today we're exploring what life is like as a member of the Secret Service. But first, before we can grant you security clearance to watch, go ahead and check the subscribe button and let us know what government entity you would like to hear more about. Now, the big cat is on the move. The big cat is on the move. Presidents are, at the end of the day, human beings just like you and me, only with nuclear codes. They enjoy kicking back and relaxing as much as the next average Joe. In order to keep the president safe at all times, including leisurely times, they sometimes have to take up the same hobbies and interests as their boss. But sometimes that works out just fine. Take Ronald Reagan, for example, a big fan of horses. Yes, before there was trickle-down economics, there was Trickle the Horse. Reagan's Secret Service agent on duty, John Barletta, loved a good jaunt on a horse too, and the two would often ride around Reagan's private ranch. Not exactly the unsafest place in the country for a president to be, but Barletta still had a job to do in case there was a sudden gust of wind or a temperamental horse. In general, Reagan was known to be pretty kind to his Secret Service agents and also had one of the most favorable hobbies that a member of the Secret Service would be forced to participate in. Bill Clinton turned himself into an avid runner during his tenure as president, which was a real pain in the butt for Secret Service members to keep up with. Clinton was slow, sure, but also stubbornly refused to run on any self-contained indoor track, military base, or treadmill. He wanted to run around in public with the people, where all the crime could be, and sweeping the area was complicated, cumbersome, and expensive. The Secret Service also had the extra fun duty of completing these runs while being weighed down with heavy guns, bulky radios, and dress shoes. Exercising for a president was surprisingly foreign up until the 90s, but Clinton used these as less of a heart-healthy, stress-reducing me time and more of a where can I find the nearest McDonald's time. With agents around the president 24/7, they sometimes have to endure more than just potentially dangerous situations. They also have the distinction of getting involved in painfully awkward ones as well. President Lyndon Johnson, for example, sounded like a real peach. He lashed out at agents when they didn't do what he wanted, which included following traffic laws. Johnson allegedly ordered an agent to break the law and jump the curb when running late to an event. When the agent refused, because that's hardly a safe way to drive, Johnson threw a fit. Johnson attempted to fire that safe driver the next day, but his job was saved after Johnson's secretary intervened, and he got off light. Johnson was a randy man who enjoyed the company of women who were not Ladybird, and his agents had a real fun time trying to navigate around his affairs with women. LBJ even chose to have one of his trysts with his secretaries in the Oval Office, which his wife had the misfortune to walk in on. After screaming at the agents for failing to warn him that his wife was on the way, an alarm system was installed to prevent it from happening again, as opposed to LBJ just not having an extramarital affair in his office. Presidents, they're just like us. They get a little moody sometimes. Former agent and author of Within Arm's Length, a Secret Service agent's definitive inside account of protecting the president, Dan Emmett worked for both Bush's, W&H, as well as Clinton. When asked who his favorite president was to protect, Dan took the fifth and refused to answer. Each man had personal highs and lows with good days and bad days. Not that hard to imagine that Obama's mood might be different on the same day that he's been passing out candy to a very tiny child dressed as the Pope versus the day that killed bin Laden. Not all agents speak with the discretion of Emmett, however. Agents who protected Richard Nixon described him as a stone-cold weirdo, with many calling him the strangest president, though what is that sample size exactly? Depressed and paranoid, Nixon, codenamed Searchlight, supposedly dipped into some extremely odd behavior, including eating dog biscuits and less odd behavior such as getting hammered on martinis during the day. Jimmy Carter came into office in 1977 with 4 children and 0 peanut farms. His youngest daughter was only 9 years old when Carter was sworn into office, so Secret Service agents had to work double duty to serve the President of the United States and to be babysitters. Good, affordable childcare can be so hard to find. Amy Carter required a Secret Service escort for something as innocuous as attending a sleepover, often putting in overtime to do so. When Amy wanted to go to a friend's house instead of being brought home after school, as they were instructed to do, she'd pull the low-key, "Do you know who my father is?" and would phone Daddy for permission, who often told her guards to take her wherever she wants to go, which is questionable parenting at best, but Jimmy had bigger things on his plate. Amy, a real sweetheart, was also known to purposefully leave crumbs like Hansel and Gretel, only less to remember where she was, and more because she was a brat who thought it funny for her Secret Service detail to clean up after her. His son, however, also a sweetheart, who went by Chip, was slightly more nefarious. He was recently separated, liked to party, and loved to bring home randoms to the White House, which made him a gas to protect. Presidents aren't the only ones under constant threat of being assassinated. Vice presidents require 24-hour protection too. Spiro Agnew, the VP to President Nixon until 1973, before it got too dicey, was prone to throw parties for a service detail and was referred to as a cop buff. In return, his Secret Service agents would throw parties for this cop buff, who would later become paranoid that his new friends, paid service detail, were talking crap about him behind his back, which, to be fair, they probably totally were. Although generally believed to have a cordial relationship with his service detail, Agnew didn't make himself less of an easy target by also needing extramarital affairs to be covered by his agents, asking for hotel rooms that could only be booked if his lover's room could be booked beside him. And they say romance is dead. The Secret Service was inconsistent when it came to the care of the president's canine friends, and rarely said thank you or please when asking agents to do more than their sworn duty demanded. For example, it probably was not a life or death scenario for President Lyndon Johnson, who's coming across just swimmingly here in general, when he asked his agents to take his dog, Yuki, out on a particularly rainy day. "Secret Service, take care of Yuki," he demanded into the air as he threw his dog outside of his Texas ranch. Though this was not a strange demand from LBJ, his detail did resent that there was nary a please or thank you thrown in the way for taking care of a muddy dog. Yuki was returned to the ranch, but not before getting the sheets all muddy, which resulted in a second non-life or death demand to clean up the damn dog. All of this according to Dennis McCarthy, who detailed his time on duty serving LBJ, whom he described as treating the guys as hired hands. When Hubert Humphrey asked a member of his service detail, Chuck Vance, Vance clapped back and told Humphrey that while he wasn't allowed to walk his dog, he would be more obliged to walk you, sir. Meow. This kitty likes to scratch. Not all stories of protecting and serving end with being riddled with bullets. Some end with love. Our old friend Chuck Vance protected both Vice Presidents Humphrey and Agnew before being reassigned to California to protect Gerald Ford after Ford left office. It was here where Vance caught the eye of Ford's daughter, Susan, and the two struck up a relationship that at first was secret and sexy, and later would become tumultuous and not sexy. When Betty Ford found out about the relationship, Mama was pissed and had Vance relocated. It was less of the on-dad's payroll thing about Vance and more the he is divorced with 2 kids that left Betty unsettled. Susan, who we presume was rebelling against her mother, married Vance anyways in 1979, where Vance would soon leave the agency to go into private security. The couple would divorce in 1988, meaning Mom, as per usual, was right. Oh, Mom. A great security detail is one you should never see coming. Like a referee in an NBA game, if they're doing their job correctly, you won't even notice they're there. Because of this, agents often blended into the background and became a witness to some of the more vulnerable moments in a president's day-to-day life. They're silent observers. Dennis McCarthy recalled President Nixon weeping when the Watergate scandal that would bring down his presidency began. Agents were also witnesses to affairs, drug use, and drinking. Slightly disconcerting things to hear about men with the nuclear codes, but because agents' presence were so common, presidents didn't give it a second thought. How comforting. Much like anything worth protecting, Guarding the president wasn't always easy, and some didn't help in making their service detail's job any easier by participating in reckless behavior. Famous playboy JFK also kept it interesting for a security detail. Kennedy liked the company of women who were not his wife. According to the agent Ronald Kessler in the book, In the President's Secret Service, behind the scenes with the agents in the line of fire and the presidents they protect. Geez, can anybody write a book with a nice, short title? Kennedy was entertaining 2 women when it was discovered Jackie O was coming home early. Kennedy hopped out of the pool and gave his unfinished drink to a nearby agent, saying, "Enjoy it, it's quite good." Unfortunately, we all know what happened on November 22, 1963. Choosing to parade in Dallas in an open-top convertible over Secret Service objections, Kennedy became the only president assassinated on the Secret Service's watch. Technically, the legislation creating the agency was on Lincoln's desk the day he was assassinated. The one thing most presidents have in common is they love golf. According to Agent Clint Hill, President Dwight D. Eisenhower's main hobby was hitting the links. He'd store a pair of cleats in the Oval Office so he could throw those bad boys on and putt in the halls of the White House during all the downtime presidents famously have. After he would putt, it was the job of his valet, Sergeant John Money, to run and fetch it. Yes, like a dog. But Money actually enjoyed the task, or so he said. If on a public course, Eisenhower would be accompanied by a service detail with a Thompson submachine gun, which is not the best way to hit a golf ball, but in a pinch can really lay the wood. On the other hand, agents felt bad for Nixon because, while Nixon enjoyed golf, he was not particularly good. One agent said, "When you saw him play golf, you were embarrassed for him. I mean, it was awful." Eventually, Nixon, being very chill, gave up on the game of golf and decried it as a game for lazy bastards. Weird, because Donald Trump seems to love it so much. But that's for Weird History in 2052. So what do you think? Would you want to serve in the Secret Service? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other fine videos from our Weird History.